So that may be true, knowing this government. They probably don't have a plan. But it may also be that he's just holding his cards close to his chest and that they don't want to sort of annoy or inflame the public any worse than it already is against them. So they're just keeping coy about it.
Well, it's an amazing thing. And I heard Bill himself say on an interview the other day that what he was talking about doing was having the recall vote afterwards.
Well, that's right. The second phase of the plan, and this is where we tell people, even if the government votes the bill down, if we're successful in the petition and the government turns around and goes ahead with the HST anyway, then the second phase of the plan is to effect a recall campaign in certain ridings. And, of course, recalls are mandated by law. If you're successful in getting the 40% of signatures that you need, then the person is automatically removed from office. And we don't need to target every MLA. We don't even need to target a small group of them. You could just simply target the leader of the Liberal Party, the Premier himself, and that would probably have the impact that you need if you were to remove him from office.
Well, if you got him and 2 or 3 others, would be even better, wouldn't it?
I'm sorry?
If you got him and 2 or 3 others, it would even be more efficient.
Well, that's right. If you got 7, actually, you could turn the government because that would be a difference of 14 in an election, and that's the difference they have in terms of their majority. So you could actually turn the government on the recall of 7 MLAs.
So you're going to have an army of volunteers up. And
yeah, well, that's the thing. We should have a couple thousand to 3,000 volunteers by the time we're done the petition. And so you could mobilize people and target specific ridings and then just go in there and recall the MLAs that vote against the wishes of their constituents, right?
No, I know
there's a number of ridings where some of the MLAs only won by very small margins, so they'd be the ones that would probably fall first.
Well, and on top of that, though, what's the timing on this? Give me the whole timing. I know. Well,
the timing, yeah, you can't effect a recall until 18 months after an election, so that takes us into November of 2010. So by the time we finish the petition, which will be July, and then by the time the legislature actually votes on it, you'll be into the fall session. So it would be September of 2011 when the government votes. And if they were to vote the petition down and vote against getting rid of the HST in spite of the fact that the province had spoken, then within 2 months after that, you'd be able to effect recall campaigns. So the timing would be disastrous for the government.
So let me just I think you just said September 2011, but you mean September 2010, don't you?
No, I'm saying, 2010, because the last election was May of 2009.
Yeah, so that we've got to go 18 months.
November of 2010.
Okay, so November 2010, but the vote on the petition is going to be in September of 2010.
Well, the government will likely vote on it in September, that's right, because the petition won't end until July.
Yes.
And then the House is recessed for the summer. And Elections BC has to do a final count and a tabulation to validate the signatures, and that takes 45 days. So that would take you into September, and then the next sitting of the legislature is in the fall, September.
Okay.
So
might you, if you're going to do this, just as you finish the petition, pick 3 ridings or something and just keep the momentum going for a recall?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Well, if we're finishing the petition for July or the end of June or something, the HST is taking effect July 1st.
Well, that's right.
So we're going to have
the petition is actually to repeal the HST. So it doesn't matter whether or not the HST has been implemented or not. The legislation they'll be voting on will be to repeal the legislation that created it.
Okay.
And return us to the PST as it was originally structured prior to the implementation of the HST.
But in the meantime, the infrastructure is going to be stricken, is it not? I'm
sorry, it's hard to hear you. I'm sorry.
In the meantime, I see my mic, I think, has just fallen down under my collar here. Is that any better?
Yeah, I can hear you. That's better, yeah.
Okay. The infrastructure of the PST is going to mainly be stricken at that point.
Mainly be what?
Stricken. They're going to go away because they're not needed anymore.
Well, that's right. I mean, if the petition is successful and they were to vote in favor of what we've said, then they would simply repeal the agreement that the federal government and the BC government signed back in June or July earlier this year, I guess.
2009, yeah.
Back in September when they did it. And it would simply repeal that act, and so we would return back to the PST.
Boy, this is a real undertaking.
Well, it is, and we're taking on some pretty powerful interests here, and you're starting to see them coming out of the woodwork now. You're seeing the Manufacturers Association and some of the big corporations that are beneficiaries of this coming out and trying to defend it, but they're not getting a lot of sympathy from people, although they are confusing them a little bit from time to time by not really giving them the whole picture. So what we try and do with these town hall meetings is fill in the blanks and help people to see the entire picture and then make a decision from there. Once people understand the full impact of the tax, both from a personal economic standpoint, but also from a constitutional standpoint, a loss of sovereignty, all the other issues that surround it, most of them are against it.
Yeah. And have we got any better, really good figures yet for just how much it's going to cost the average person?
Well, yeah, and we've done a number of calculations. There is a document on our website called the HST hit list that people can download and take a look at, and it lists all of the items that will now have 7% more attached to them, and you can do your own calculation to figure out how much it will cost you. But the reality is the government's own numbers say that they will raise an additional $1.9 billion on the tax, which consumers will pay. So if you take the population of British Columbia, which is roughly 4 million people, and divide it by $2 billion, you're somewhere coming in just under $500 for every man, woman, and child that will have to be raised through this tax. Some people will, of course, pay more, others will pay less.
That's just an amount that there's so many people out there that can't afford it. And I mean, it's easy to say people can't afford, but it will just be disastrous for so many seniors and so on on fixed incomes.
Well, that's right. And this is the problem with a consumption-based tax, is that it hits everybody equally. So you could be a wealthy millionaire in North Vancouver, bringing in several $100,000 in salary a year, and you can be a pensioner bringing home $15,000 or $16,000 a year, and you have to pay the same 7% as the rich guy on everything that you buy. So automatically that means that people at the lower end of the scale will have to scale back and reduce consumption. And when you start multiplying that by millions of people, this is the reason why businesses, particularly retailers, are against the tax, because they say, what's the gain for us if we get to put an input tax credit in for tax paid, but we've lost, 7% or 8% of our customer base? It's a wash. We haven't gained anything. So not only consumers, but retailers particularly, and restaurant people, tourism people, construction, real estate people are very much against it, because they can see that it'll impact their business to the negative. So there's no winners when you do that.
Well, one of the things, I've been trying to follow along with it, but it's back into income tax, and keeping up with changes in the U.S. and so on takes up most of my time right now. But one of the things I've noticed is that just 2 weeks ago they came up with some better information where they're talking about how they're going to implement it on houses and contracts that are partially fulfilled as of July the 1st. And if you've got, for the sake of argument, a $300,000 condo that's half built, the first half of it will be exempt and the second half will be there. And other things like that. Depends on how much of the construction's being done. But something I have not seen yet in the regulations or anything that I've read is what they're going to do about the present exemption. Because if somebody is in business and they're only doing $20,000 worth of business, they do not need to register for GST and collect GST at the moment.
That's right.
If they don't have to do it up to $30,000, which is one of the things that every fireman in this province does, because not everyone, but lots of them have they got little side businesses, and they stay under $25,000, $30,000, and they have an economic advantage if the firemen.
Well, that's right. And what we've heard is that the HST will now apply to $1, so there will be no exemptions anymore under the $30,000 amount. So this is another area where the government is actually creating a tax grab, because they're now going to be hitting, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who have small side businesses where they earn maybe not even $30,000. Maybe they're only earning 8 or 10 in a year on a little cottage business that they run out of a rural community somewhere where they sell, handmade boxes or whatever it is that they do. And now suddenly they're paying HST on everything and flowing it through and charging it to everybody too. So